Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose. Welcome back to Pain with a Purpose, Season 1, Episode 14, with Jackie Lewin. All the way from, where are you from, Deerfield?
Delray.
Delray. I can't tell the difference. It's all South Florida, but not originally, right?
No, not originally. Originally from New Jersey.
Move that a little bit closer to you.
That's good?
Yeah.
Test.
Yep.
Yeah, Lawrenceville, New Jersey.
Okay.
Right outside Princeton. Next
so
to
that's
Trenton.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's
little
more
bougie,
like,
little hood.
is that like central or north?
Central.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
So who's Jackie? Why in the world would I have you come on? We'll get into all that. We do need to note, though, the last time I was with you, I don't know, 6 hours later, I was in the hospital.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was food poisoning.
We thought it was. I mean, I haven't talked to Casey. Well, I knew it was food poisoning because Casey was sick too.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, all right, I'm just overreacting.
And then like 3 days later, you're like, nope. Major surgery.
No, literally like 12 hours later, it was like, no, yeah, just got out of surgery. Whatever. Did it without pain meds though. It is possible.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway, it was great to meet you the other day.
For the first time.
So where do we want to go with this? Right. So what is your story? How about walk me through this? So we're on Pain with a Purpose, right? It's a lot of it based around like mental health and substance abuse and addiction and alcoholism. And obviously I know that you're in recovery. Mm-hmm. So we'll just throw that out there and if you had any anonymity in that sense. Mm-hmm. But like, give me your story. So like what happened, when did you actually like finally get sober? But like, when did you actually start like trying to find recovery?
So my first experience with recovery was 2007. That was like my first time in treatment. I was like a part of the whole OxyContin 80 epidemic, 22 years old. Started with like perks and Vikes here and there, and then was introduced to OC80s, and then, quickly got addicted and quickly didn't take long until I was like stealing money from my parents, my grandparents, lying, like doing all of that. Mm-hmm. And really that's like when I first found out what withdrawal was, and again, my first time in treatment was like when I got caught. I got caught stealing money, and my parents were like, okay, you have to go to treatment, and then I went down to Florida for the first time in 2007.
And then when you went down to Florida, did you stay down there for a little bit? Like, did you do well down there? Yeah,
I like got to treatment and I was like, this is great. Like I'm in Florida, the detox wasn't that bad back then, at least I don't remember it. I went to treatment and like, I kind of just like didn't really truly know what it took to like stay sober. Mm-hmm. I just felt like, oh, okay, I have like a problem with pills. I just need to get off of it. And then, I'll be good.
I remember that. Like it's so wild because I remember being in treatment, right? And like being in detox. And when I was like in detox, maybe like day 2, day 3, I'm like raising my hand. I'm like relating with everybody. As soon as I wake up and like my detox is over, I'm like, well, hold on. I'm not like anybody here. Right. Because when I first went to treatment too at I think I was like 18, 19, something like that. It was for like the oxys and like the Percocets and stuff like that. I hadn't got into anything really else up until that point. And it was like, as soon as I woke up sober, I was like, whoa, hold on, and then I would leave treatment early, and that was,
so that like wasn't my experience at first. Like at first I was like in treatment and I was like, telling everybody else what they should do. And then I was like, I like loved it. You know what I mean? Like I had a good time in treatment. I think I like found a boyfriend in treatment my first time, like I was just like, I didn't take it seriously at all. you know. It wasn't until like much later on that like I really struggled with like sitting in detox and being in treatment. And there was a period of time that I like was in and out for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was in and out the entire time until I got sober, essentially.
Yeah.
But from like 19 to 23, you know, multiples of treatment stints, whether I stayed the whole time or left early or whatever it was like, I didn't, like you said, right? Like I didn't know what I was really up against.
Yeah.
Not like I really even know now, but like I have a little bit of a better understanding of it. But I had no clue that it was like much more than just like staying away from perks or like not drinking and that's what I thought. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then you struggled for a bit, right?
Struggled for a bit, took the suggestion, went down to Florida, stayed in a halfway house. That was my first experience with Delray back in 2007. I was there for like a year and a half. And again, just like didn't take it seriously, went to halfway, found friends, went to the beach, like said I had a sponsor, but like really didn't do anything to work on myself. Eventually like got back with the ex-boyfriend, moved back to Jersey, relapsed again, went back down to Florida in 2009. And then moved back up to Jersey. And then from like 2010 to 2014, I was on Suboxone maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job at a detox and I was like, you know, maintaining this job and, but like on maintenance. And I loved my job. I loved working in detox. I was a tech. And I didn't really know like how bad. Can I talk about that on here?
It's up to you. It's your experience.
How bad how bad the maintenance was, you know, for me. You know, it didn't like I still was like struggling with relationships, like struggling with like driving on suspended lists, like not being able to budget, like so everything else in my life like on the outside looked good, but I was still like struggling. So I came to a point where I was like, okay, I have to get off this, you know? And so I was like, but I'm not going back to treatment again. I was like done with like that. I didn't want to go back to treatment. I was like,
it's tough, especially when you're working in treatment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I was like, it's just not going to work for me, you know? So I decided to go to South America. And
what a curveball. I had no clue that was coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went down to South America to 3 different countries, did ayahuasca 28 times. I lived in the Amazon with a tribe for 6 weeks, like sweating out Suboxone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went to Ecuador. I went to a retreat center first. And then I went on a jungle excursion in the Amazon for 6 weeks after that, and then went to Costa Rica after that. Because
I had no clue this was coming.
Yeah, I know.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's crazy.
Did it work?
So the first trip, I like brought the medication with me, so I was like I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like, you know how like I was like, I'm gonna take it this day and then this day, and I ended up like not being able to get off of it, and like, you know, I was doing the ceremonies like under the medication, and like you're not supposed to do that. So I get back, and my boyfriend at the time, he's like, did you get off of it? And I was like, no. And he's like, all right, we're going on a deep jungle excursion. So I was like, okay. So off to Colombia we went, and stayed in this like hostel in like some town that like has never seen an American before, you know, and it was scary. But we woke up and got on the boat and went like 2 hours down the river and went into the jungle and stayed with a tribe in a hut. And like did these ceremonies, and like obviously I didn't have the medication with me, so I was withdrawing.
Yeah.
You know, it was a cool experience just because like of like it was something that I like never would have done, you know, and like I would never do it again, you know. But at that time in my life, I was so desperate to like find something else, right? Like always seeking something that that's what I did. And, you know, it was terrifying and it was painful, but it was also like a really cool experience, you know?
So like when you went and did all this, right, was it more like twofold? So like one, to get off the medication, two, to find like more of a spiritual lifestyle?
Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time that I had like not made that decision that I wasn't going to go back to treatment, but I'm going to try something different because like AA had failed me, treatment had failed me, you know, like in my mind. So I was like, I'm gonna try this, you know? And like that same boyfriend at the time had gotten off heroin by going to Peru and doing this medicine. So I was like, all right, you know, I'll give it a try.
Wow. I'm not joking. Like I had no clue. Okay. So shortly thereafter, when you got back from all those excursions, like was there any success with it or?
You know, I never like got dependent on Suboxone again. So like that was a blessing that like I was done with that. But success, like long-term sobriety, no. You know, I got back. We went on another trip to Costa Rica, and like because I was on that medication for so long, I was so just like emotionally and spiritually like empty still that like I didn't really enjoy Costa Rica. Like I still like couldn't sleep. Like I was still really like messed up for a long time. So I ended up getting a job at a treatment center, a new treatment center that had just opened. A friend of mine from years back was opening up this treatment center, and he was like, Jack, I'm opening up this treatment center. I want you to be a part of it, you know? And so I did. And like, I helped open that treatment center. I stayed there for a while, you know, I became like a counselor intern. And then like, you know, it was a small facility at the time. So like we did help a lot of people. And then like, I think a year and a half later, I ended up relapsing. You know, and this time it wasn't on pills. I had graduated to heroin, and I was sneaking it. I was like, you know, was using it at work. I was like leaving for lunch and going to Trenton and coming back. And then one day I was just like, I just left and went to treatment, you know, and went back down to Florida, stayed down there for about a year. And then came back to the job. Still didn't like work on myself. Like, you know, my job was my recovery. Like I thought that like that was like fulfilling me enough at the time. But it wasn't. It wasn't enough. I ended up relapsing again, maybe like 9 months later, after I got back. So I had like a year and a half of like, you know, abstinence. But I ended up relapsing again, and that's like. That relapse was like changed my whole life. Like from that moment on, I had gone back down to Florida, and while I was in Florida, I was in a halfway house, and I was probably like 3 months, 3 months clean, and my halfway house manager came in the room, and she's like, "Your dad's trying to get in touch with you, but you're not answering your phone. Here's the phone." So I take the phone, and it's my cousin and my dad. And my dad can't even talk. And my cousin's like, "Jacqueline, you need to come home. Your sister passed away of an overdose last night."
So sorry.
So that, and then like, and that was in May of 2018. And like that event was life-changing, obviously, you know?
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
So that was at 3 months sober.
3 months sober.
And she was still living in Jersey?
She was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that it's like obviously so much closer to home. It's your sister, right? But like how many of us outside of your sister, like, I mean, people are dropping like flies.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any easier, but like, I don't know. I'm going to ask, and if like it strikes like a certain chord with you, you can tell me to go F myself. Since then, and since like obviously I have lost more people since then, do you find that you're like super desensitized to all of it?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I think that like every single time someone passes that we know, or that's in our community, or, you know, was a client at the treatment center, I feel like it always still hits the same.
Yeah. See, now that's not my story, right? And this might rub some people like the wrong way, right? But like my truth is my truth. And now this past year, maybe 2 years, I'm not good with timelines anymore. I lost like one of my best friends, right? He was at my wedding, the whole nine. He was actually like struggling while he was in like standing next to me in my wedding. Like he kept his sunglasses on the whole time. Funniest kid I've ever met in my life, but like the most genuine guy ever. But like when it happened and I got the call, it was almost like, okay, right? Because like I knew, right? And like his family, if they're listening to this, you know, like that's not easy to hear, right? But like he struggled so much, like internally, even in sobriety, right? And it was just like, that was just like one of the others that we have lost like up until this point. And it's just like, is that normal? Should I feel that way? Absolutely not. I should not, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely part of like losing my sister, like always like knowing, right? Because she like struggled so much more than I did, you know, like she had Crohn's disease her whole life and like was in and out of hospitals and started with painkillers at a very young age and like just was like wild, you know what I mean? Like she was wild. And so I always like knew in the back of my head, like that, like I'm going to get the call one day, you know?
Yeah.
But then when it happens, when it's like real and it actually happens, it's a different.
Well, I'm sure it's different I mean, it's your sister.
Yeah.
Right. I can only imagine. I mean, have you lost like other people like that too?
Yeah. So, after my sister passed, I had gone on like a 3-year run. And in those 3 years, I was like in and out of detoxes, you know, I would like go in, you know, because like my dad would call me crying, you know, or my friend would like, come and like call the police and take my car, like just like really, I was like forced into it every time. And I would go into detox and I would just like not even be able to like stand it, you know, and I'd like leave after one day.
Yeah.
In and out, in and out. And along, you know, in those 3 years, I had met someone who, you know, I was with in those 3 years, you know, running with. Also like the love of my life. And so at the end of our run, we ended up in Georgia. And we were going to Blue Ridge, Georgia to like get clean, you know? And at the time, you know, I was like, I like knew in my heart that like, this is not real. This is not reality. Like, what are you doing? You know, like my family and friends are like, what is going on? You know, and I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, we're going to go to Georgia and live in a cabin in the mountains.
All planned out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, we ended up, finding, you know, crystal meth, which was like another like dark drug. And we were using that for a couple months and ended up finding fentanyl. And August 19th of 2020, you know, we had used all night long. I woke up and Jesse, my boyfriend, had passed away of an overdose right next to me. And I had like, you know, same feeling like when I woke up, but like, and again, like taking it back to the situation with my sister, like I had flown home that day to attend her services and I'd used the very next day, you know, and the same thing with Jesse was like, okay, I'm not staying in Georgia because I'm going home because like, that's where I know where to get high.
Yeah.
You know, that was my first thought. And, you know, I was in active addiction when these things happen. So it wasn't like, oh, like, you know, they died of an overdose. So like, I'm not gonna not use, you know?
Well, for your sister, you had 3 months, right? And then Jesse, you were actively using.
Yes.
I mean, it brings up like a completely different topic, right? But at the same time, the exact same topic where it's like, if you would have like wanted to stop, or if you could have stopped yourself, right?
Yeah.
You would have, right? You know, there's a ton of people that'll be like, well, you know, like, you know, it's not a disease or this, that, and the third, or, you know, if she wanted better, she would have done it. Or if she wanted to not be a, you know, they call us a ton of names, right? But if she wanted to not be like, you know, a drug addict, then she just would have stopped. And it's like, no, like if I could have stopped, I would have stopped at 19 the first time I was in treatment.
Right.
I would have never went to as many treatments or into relapse as many times or did half the stuff that I did or robbed the people that I had robbed or hurt the loved ones that I have. Like,
yeah,
I would have never done any of this.
It wasn't even like a thought. Like, it was just like a natural thing. Like, okay, I'm going to get high. Like, there was no like crying on the way down to cop. There was no like begging not to let me do this. Like, it was immediate. And I was on a mission to die, really, at the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's how much pain that I was in at the time.
Yeah. And furthermore, I mean, when we're wrapped up in it, like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Right. It's such a, you know, being on this side of it for a number of years, I wouldn't say that I forget, but it definitely, you know, I don't even know how to describe it. Like the fact that I lived that life for as long as I did, the fact that you lived that life for as long as you did, somebody who saw you walking down the street, they'd have no clue.
No clue.
And that's kind of like the part that I'm trying, or the point that I'm trying to make is that we're not bad people, right? We're not bad people. I never wanted this for myself. I never like woke up and was like, I'm going to burn my life to the ground by doing this, and this.
Right.
You know, I got wrapped up in it, and before I knew it, like I was way too deep in it where it was like, this is what it is. And, you know, now I had to get myself out of it. Right.
Yeah.
Find that purpose, if you will. But,
yeah.
Okay. So Jesse passed too. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And then when he passed, I had moved home, and then I was like, you know, using for 4 months, you know, at my dad's house. And you know, the way I use drugs, I always use with somebody because I didn't know how to administer them. Right.
Yeah.
So like in those 4 months, I had like completely destroyed like my veins. Like, you know, I was like, I was getting infections. Like I was so sick, and I had like done this to myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the day that I went in to treatment, you know, of course, like I waited till like 11:50 at night, like the latest point that I can go. Yeah. And even like on the way to that treatment center, I remember being like, I got to figure a way out of this. You know what I mean? Like I'm just doing this. So like my dad stops crying in my face and begging me to like be a different person. And, but like I was so in my addiction that like I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even like, there was no hope at that point, you know? So, I went into detox, and like, I was miserable. I like woke up the next day, you know, that's like the worst day when you wake up the next day in a detox. And, because it was never like the drugs were the problem. It was always like when the drugs ran out, you know, and like, here I am in this detox, with all the pain of like losing my sister, of losing Jesse, and then like,
being back in treatment,
tearing my life down, you know, the shame, the guilt, all of it. So I really struggled in that treatment center. And I remember like, you know, just staying, you know, I don't know how, but I did. And like, there were people and like, I chose this treatment center because like nobody I knew worked there, you know, because I'd been around for so long, like I knew people everywhere, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll go there because nobody knows me, you know, and I don't know anybody. And as it turned out, like I knew the one of the therapists, I knew the maintenance guy, you know, like I knew all these people, and they were like, Jackie, and like truly those were the people that kept me there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was just a mess. I was you know, I was a mess. And I remember though, my therapist, like I remember walking down the hall, like hadn't showered in days. I was like, you know, in the same clothes probably for like a week. And she like screams down the hallway, and she's like, girl, you ain't got to look like what you've been through. And I was like, oh my God, you know, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that, you know? And another thing she would say is like, these things didn't happen to you. They happened for you. And I didn't understand it at the time. Now I do 100%, you know, but then was like, what is she talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What is she talking about? I couldn't grasp it.
I mean, it's literally the whole premise of the podcast, right? Pain with a purpose. I firmly believe that like I went through everything that I went through for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever you believe in, whether it be God, karma, love, nature, it doesn't matter, right? I firmly believe that everything happens for, you know, exactly how it's supposed to. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what am I going to do with it? And that's kind of how this whole thing kind of started, right?
Yeah.
Not to like completely like digress and go in a different, you know, different way and take away from your experience, but I believe that, right? And it's the truth, right? Like this stuff didn't happen to you. It happened for you, right? Because you didn't know it at the time. You didn't know it probably a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later. But now, fast forward a few years later,
you see it's
very apparent.
Yeah.
Right.
And and again, you'd never see it in the moment. It's always like later on down the line, you're like, oh, that's why that happened.
Mm-hmm. Hindsight's 20/20.
You know, and as you see that more and more in your life, or as I see that more and more in my life, when bad things happen, that's how you practice faith. You're like, okay, this is happening for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. As my experience shows.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine, you probably can't count because you're probably humble, right? But like if you had to really think about it, like think about how many people you have helped because of what happened or what, you know, you went through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God has like a very unique way of like putting us through a weird amount of pain or a specific amount or a specific type of pain, because later on you have no idea who's going to be placed in front of you where you're going to be able to just like lend an ear and be like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, like genuinely, I get it. And I'm here for you. And this is like what worked for me. It might not work for you. If you want to take that route, that's okay too. But I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unbelievable too, because for so long in my life, I was very self-centered, very selfish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like we didn't get there yet, but I have, you know, I own a recovery house now, and I never would have imagined, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about other people. You know, I was so wrapped up in self for so many years that like I could have never imagined the life that I have today.
Yeah. And whether you know it or not, I have like had like some like brief interactions with people that have gone through your house. Right. Oh. And I know that like it's a no bullshit type of house.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there's like some, you know, like there's like very specific rules that they have to follow. And if not, like there's places for, you know, if you want to go to a place and just like pay rent and maybe stay sober, maybe not, like there's places for that. Mm-hmm. Right. But like I know that it's called Jessica's house.
Jessica's house. Yeah. It's Safe House Sober Living.
Safe House Sober Living. Shout out Nick Connor.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Nick.
He'll be on here at some point. If we can ever get him up here. But yeah, I mean, you run a no bullshit type of house.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like the type of house that I got sober at too, because that's what I needed.
Yeah.
You know, it was like I had my own plans and designs of like what my recovery was supposed to look like. And they were like, nah, dude, we're not doing any of that. So yeah, talk a little bit about that, like Jessica's house and the community that you guys have built, because I know like I follow on social media. I know that you guys have like a pretty cool community that you've built around, or kind of like came around you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been like the best experience ever. You know, I started, with, I was like helping out another recovery house in the area, you know, because like I work for a treatment center. I, love the detox level of care, but like sober living is like where it's at. You know what I mean? Like that population.
That's where the magic happens.
That's where the magic happens. You know, people change, they get things back. Like, you know, it's super, super rewarding. So I was like helping out another recovery house in the area, and I ended up meeting Nick, and like I was like researching him and his house and like all the houses that he has and like the purpose and stuff like that. And every single house that he opened was in memory of someone close to him that he had lost.
Yep.
And like that to me was like, wow, like that's amazing, you know? And so I met him, and I was like, you know, look how I loved how he ran his houses, you know, how he was with the guys, the community. You know, he talks to every single guy that comes into the house.
Yeah.
You know, and helps all of them out. So he was like, yeah, I want to open a girl's house. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, we should open a girl's house together. And I was like super unsure about it at first. Like I really wanted to, but I was still like I don't know if I can do that, you
It's
know?
that fear, right?
Like I have a full-time job, like it keeps me very busy, and you know, I don't know if I could do that, right? And it was fear, you know? And so we ended up doing it. We ended up opening the house and you know, keeping the same rules and like you know, reasons on why we do it and why we have the sober livings for the guys and the girls. Girls are different. Girls are harder, you know, and I tell Nick that all the time because he's like, sometimes he's like, you're too strict. And I'm like, girls are different. Okay. Girls are bad in early recovery.
Yeah.
Like they need a lot of guidance, you know? So, but yeah. And then, we opened it as Jessica's house, you know, and again, it is surely magic, you know, seeing every woman in there, like get, like little achievements, you know, like get through their steps or like finish their 5th step, you know, or get a car, get the job they wanted, get to see their kids, you know, get to have relationships back with their families. Like that stuff is amazing, you know, and it totally beats like the petty drama that there's stuff. There's crap that comes along with it too, you know, like, but that stuff beats it, you know, it's amazing.
It makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like seeing the light come on in people's eyes, right? Is like, you can't, there's no price that can like be put on that, you know? I remember like the first time I saw like a few of my buddies that I grew up with, like, you know, get sober. Right. And it's so weird how like life comes full circle. Right. So like now there was a good like 6 years where I didn't talk to this kid, but now I talk to him almost every day. You know, and seeing him get sober and like become a man and like become a productive employee, a productive member of society is just like, you can't make this stuff up because like the first time I went into treatment, that's all I wanted. Right. But then you get around like-minded people and you like take some suggestions, right? Because that was huge for me. And next thing you know, like I like really surpassed what I thought my life was going to be, you know? And I forget that a lot. But yeah, so seeing the light come on is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff. And I've been through like so much that like I just, you know, I know I know when like they're not telling the truth or when like you know, when stuff's going down, like you can't fool me, you know what I mean? Like it's
you're either their best, you know, like their greatest blessing or like their biggest nightmare any given day.
Yeah, but it's been awesome, you know, and hoping to open up another girl's house, you know. We have 12 beds at Jessica's house, looking to open up a second women's house for sure.
And how long do like the girls usually stay? The motivated ones, the ones that want to be there.
Yeah, I'd say like I have 2 girls that have been with me since I opened, which was in January of 23. So and then I would say like between 4 to 6 months. They stay.
And that's a pretty good amount of time. Right. Because I remember, I mean, I stayed in sober living for like 15 months just because like I'm pretty sure the owner was like, dude, we need the bed. And I'm like, okay.
It's time.
But like, as much as I didn't want to be at a recovery house, I eventually fell in love with a recovery house, right? And fell in love with the brotherhood and like the, you know, really just the connection that I've been looking for my entire life. But I don't know, like that's for me, like that's where I've rebuilt my life. That was like the foundation for me.
And that's what we try to do. Like, it's not all just like, okay, curfew, 5 meetings a week. This is what you have to do. Like, I'll take them kayaking. You know what I mean? Like we'll do like a dinner night or, you know, I'll just like pull up and we'll all go to a meeting one night, you know, we'll have game night. You know, I try to like really drill it into them that like, this is your community. You know, this comes first.
Yeah. It's, again, full circle moment, right? Like the majority of the people that were like in my wedding were like from the recovery house. Right. And I remember like sitting in front of a therapist at whatever number of treatment that I was at. And I was like, well, what about like everybody I grew up with? Like, I'm not going to talk to them no more. Like, what about all my boys? And it's like, I didn't have any boys. I burned all those bridges before they were even built, you know? The connections that we make in recovery are like for life.
For sure.
All right, so we talked a bit about like Safe House, Sober Living, right? We talked about Nick Connor. He's going to come on at some point, but we got to give a shout out to Kathy Connor and Val.
Yes.
Right? Because like how much...
They're amazing women.
To put it lightly, big event coming up, right? What is it? The
Never Surrender Hope Overdose Awareness Walk.
Yeah.
August 24th. You can see it on their Facebook page.
Yeah.
They have all the information on there about it.
Yeah. And they do like a really cool, almost like a memorial thing during the event, right?
Yep.
So you and Nick will be up for that. I'll see you at the event.
Yeah.
You know, no other reason just to shout them out because like they do some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And I know they help a ton of people out with like funding and all that stuff. And it's like, you know, I'm sure it was around when I was getting sober, but like, I just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But like how crucial for somebody that's like motivated, that just like has burnt every bridge, that it's like, hey, don't worry about rent.
Yeah.
Like we're going to.
And not just that, even like the families, you know, like they are really super helpful to families that have lost a loved one or who have not lost a loved one and are just like dealing with their loved one's addiction. You know, they have these meetings where they get together. They're always available by phone for support. You know, they have these events that they hold. It's just really, really cool, you know, and nothing like that was around, you know, before years ago that I can remember either. So
well, I mean, the stigma is still very much a thing, right? But like the stigma, it kind of like trumped anybody like really speaking up a number of years ago, right? Where it was like, you know, not my family, you know, not in my backyard. Yeah. It's like, you'll cast judgment until it's your loved one.
That's right.
Okay. So to keep it current, right? Again, we're in PA, right? You're not from PA. You're still living in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Which, do we have to like keep tabs on you if you're going to be in Jersey? You're going to be good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, because listen, I paid attention to the entire episode. Every time you go back to Jersey.
I got sober up here.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got sober at Garden State Treatment Center. And I stayed there for like 10 months. So yeah, I got sober in New Jersey. Never would have thought.
So we're good.
Yeah,
all
yeah. Right. Florida, if anything, is where like I ran a lot, you know. So, but
I mean, I wish they sent me to Florida. It's so beautiful down there. But anyway, so you're up here for a few days, right? And I mean, you want to talk about like the gifts of recovery, right? Like, you're up here for like a wedding or something like that?
Yeah. I have a wedding tomorrow night. Someone that I worked with at Garden State actually is getting married. And a lot of my work friends are going, so it'll be a good time.
Yeah. So moving forward, right? We talked about a ton of pain, right? More pain than the majority of this world will probably ever have to experience. How have you turned that into a purpose outside of Safe House and Jessica's house and, you know, what you do for work? But like, again, not to talk too much about like the personal brand, right? But I'm sure much like anybody that like comes in contact with you knows what you're about. Mm-hmm. How have you had like a sort of like a shift to turn that into your purpose?
You know, I don't know what shifted. I think that like after everything that happened and like when I got sober this time, I too was like, I'm going all in with this, you know, and became like super honest about everything and really, really like got into the work, got into the program, like really threw myself into it. My purpose today is obviously helping people, you know, but also just like being a better daughter. You know, my dad moved down to Florida 6 months ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
He never lived in Florida. Like we always came down when we were younger. My grandparents had a place, but he moved down 6 months ago. You know, me and my mom still lives up here, so I visit with her, but we have a great relationship. You know, being a good employee, you know, all the things, being a good dog mom. I got 2 pitties at home. Bella and Bruce Springsteen. Shout out the boss.
Okay.
So yeah.
I mean, I told you about that, right? When like there was something like Bella. What's the Instagram?
Oh, the real Bella Jean.
Yeah.
You're like,
and I was like, who is this? They like liked something on Pain with a Purpose, and I was like, who could this be? And it's just Jackie Stalk. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a flirt.
That's great. Well, anything else you want to say before we shut it down?
No, I mean,
actually, not to cut you off, I'm so sorry. You are like an example of like, it literally doesn't matter, right? Like how many times you've tried this or how many times you've had success and then fell off, or then had success multiple times and fell off, or maybe even had success 3 times and fell off. You just pick it up and you just try it one more time. All right. Yeah. If you just have like a glimmer of hope, right? Or just like a
small one, just a little
slight opportunity to like just take one suggestion. You have no idea what can like your life can turn into. Yeah.
And that's like that's why like I'm willing to pretty much like help anyone, you know, whether they're in Kensington or, you know, in Boca Raton. I'm like, listen, if I can do it, you know, anybody can do it. Anybody.
I forgot about that. You were late to dinner.
Yeah.
Before I went to the hospital. And I remember you saying, you were like, no, sorry. I was literally down the way picking up people and like trying to get them into treatment and looking for people.
Yeah.
We need more people like you. Right. Cause it's not slowing down. Kensington is very much still a very real thing. And everything that's going on down there it's like not even imaginable at this point.
It's literally a war.
Yeah.
A world war. It's awful, you know, and I don't like go down there often but when I am up here and I do go down there to like look for people, you know, it's sad, but I make it a mission to find them.
And you found them, right?
And I found them.
Are they doing okay now? Because that was like 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, one of them is at Safe House. He went to the hospital and detox. He's at Safe House now. He's doing good. He's in a PHP program. And then the other one was in the hospital a little bit longer, and he's in treatment.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And his brother is at Safe House, and that was kind of like
that's how it all came together. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I remember you saying that. You were like, "Does he look like, you know, so and so?" And you're like, "Yo, are you so and so's brother?" And he was like, "Yeah."
He's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Come over, get over here."
Yeah.
It was wild how it all worked out, but like that's the stuff that like.
Yeah.
You know.
And listen, I brought it up just because like it just like came into my mind, but it's like that's how humble you are, right? Like that's the shit that you do, right? Like I'm sure you weren't going to bring that up, but it's like, you know, I'm a firm believer of like, what are we doing behind closed doors, right? Like, what are we doing when nobody's watching?
Yeah.
And like, what are we not taking credit for, right? And that's huge.
Yeah.
So, what do you actually do for work?
So, I am the director of business development for Recreate Behavioral Health Network.
Okay. What is that?
We have 5 facilities, 3 in Florida, 1 in New Jersey, and 1 in New York. So we have Long Island Treatment Center in New York, PHP, IOP. And then we have Garden State Treatment Center in Sparta, New Jersey. And then we have Allure Detox in West Palm, Recreate Life Counseling in Boynton, which is our PHP, and then Turning Point of Tampa in Tampa.
So you guys do a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Soon to be Recreate Ohio in September.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't spend all of your time up here in Kensington. You're running around all over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's phenomenal. Okay.
Yeah. I'm an alumni of like 3 of our programs. And
like another like a full circle moment, right?
Full
Where
circle.
It's like, you know, again, you can do whatever you want in this world.
Yeah.
As long as you just take some suggestions, right?
Yeah.
Because did you say director?
Director,
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, from everything that you just said, right, to all that pain, to like a corporate job, essentially. Yeah. You want to talk about like a life beyond your wildest dreams? It was like I was just happy, like not, you know, having to use every day, you know, and to like see where life is today. I'm sure you have these moments as well, where it's like, you know, I can't believe this.
I can't believe it. Yeah, I mean, and it's such a short amount of time too. You know, like December 21st, 2020 is my sobriety date.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and in such a short time, like really good things have happened, you know.
Was that during COVID?
Yeah. Yeah. That was during COVID. The end of it.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, but it's not a short amount of time though, right? I mean, like it's already been 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so recreate, safe house, Jessica's house.
Yeah.
Just a woman in recovery, right? I mean, I'm sure the list goes on and on and on and on, and I just can't think about it. But it's like
Jungle lady.
Jungle lady.
Zumba.
20
I was a Zumba instructor for a while. I've done it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, right? I mean, what's next? Because you're already doing a ton of stuff. I mean, I'm a firm believer that like you didn't get brought this far just to stop here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do you think it's going to look like, in the years to come?
I know. I don't know. I mean, like, I can't even sit here and say, because like I had no idea a couple years ago, that this was the plan for me, so I don't know. I think as long as like I stay on this path, as long as like, I plan to open up more houses for sure, help more people.
What about up here? Like, we need, not saying that there's not strong like female recovery houses, but like we need them.
I know.
We need resources.
I know. We've definitely talked about it.
Yeah, we definitely need strong female houses up here. Mommy and me programs up here. We'll get there at some point. I don't think, we need resources everywhere, really, but we definitely
I would love to do that up here as well, and just like be back and forth all the time.
Yeah. More than you already are.
Yeah.
The YouTube thing, I got to say that.
Oh yeah.
So if you like what we're saying, Instagram Pain W Purpose, YouTube Pain with a Purpose Podcast, and Apple and Spotify Pain with a Purpose Podcast. We'll see if anybody even listens to this. Like, if you did listen to it, give us a thumbs up.
A like.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll see how many. I might get like 2. That's fine. But yeah, definitely appreciate you coming out again. I said it probably now twice or 3 times, but thank you again for everything that you do. And yeah, with that, unless you have anything else to say.
No, I don't. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you again. And we will see you guys next week.